Hello, students. This is Miss Rungwin, and today I'm going to talk to you about the digestive system. The objectives that we're covering today are objectives 11 and 14. We're just going to walk through the pathway that food takes through our digestive system or our digestive tract, and then we're also going to talk about some of these accessory organs, the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas, and how they contribute to our digestive system. Main functions, so we'll do a brief overview first. The main functions of our digestive system are to break down our food molecules. So every time you eat food, those nutrients then have to get into our body cells, and we have to be able to absorb them into our bloodstream and get them into our blood so that they can be distributed through all of our body parts through the capillaries. There's kind of three main types of digestion. I'll just kind of show all of these all at once here. So there's the physical digestion, that's physically breaking down our food into smaller molecules. The chemical digestion is using enzymes to help break those food molecules down into smaller monomers. So we're going to take those big starchy molecules and break them down into those individual monomers or monosaccharides, for example. And then the absorption is trying to get those molecules into your bloodstream so that they can be spread throughout the body through your circulatory system. All right, so this is just a quick overview of the entire pathway that food might take as it travels through your body. So we know it goes in through the mouth. Once you swallow it, it goes into your esophagus, down to the stomach, small intestine, then the large intestine, and whatever remains in the tract at that time will then be eliminated from your body through the anus. All right, so we're going to go through and I'm going to provide a little bit more detail about each of these structures I just showed you. So in the mouth, this is where we have our first starting of the digestive process. So you actually have a couple of different types of digestion that take place here in the mouth. You are physically breaking down the food by crushing it and grinding it with your teeth and your tongue, but you also have chemical digestion. Your salivary glands that are below your tongue, as well as on the roof of your mouth, you're producing salivary amylase, which helps to chemically break down the food molecules. Once you're done mixing up the food and chewing it into small enough little bits and pieces, then you can swallow your food or your beverage, and it will pass through the pharynx, which is the back of your throat. Now, you've probably heard people say, oh, and they might start coughing, and they say it went down the wrong tube. We have a little flap of tissue that's called the epiglottis, and that's in the back of our throat behind our tongue down a little ways. And that little flap of tissue called the epiglottis is supposed to help prevent food and drinks and spit from going into our lungs. We don't want any of our food particles or beverages to get into our lungs. And so this epiglottis is a little flap of tissue that should protect your trachea, your windpipe, from having anything enter it that shouldn't be in there. So that's why we start to cough. It means that something has literally gone down the wrong tube. If you look closely at this picture, we've got two parallel tubes. Our esophagus, where the food and beverages should go towards the back of your neck in this tube here. And sometimes spit, or if we're eating and we kind of inhale as we're talking, we might have a little food particle that goes down into our trachea, which is part of our respiratory system. So we start to cough and try to get that back up here so that we can actually swallow it into our esophagus. Once we are swallowing the food or beverages, it will then go down into a tube called esophagus. And so this esophagus is a skinny, tiny little tube that will help to push your food or your beverage down into your stomach. The cool thing about this is it's an involuntary type of movement. So you have these muscles that are essentially squeezing in this wave-like contraction. They're squeezing your food down into the stomach through this wave-like contraction. It's called peristalsis. You don't need to know the term, but it pushes that food down into your stomach. So you could technically be eating while laying down. If you're watching TV, you could still be eating. And this is why even in space, astronauts at the space station, they can still eat and the food will continue to go down into their stomach even when there's no gravity. Those muscles are strong enough to push the food and beverages down into the stomach. So after the esophagus, you then have this pouch called the stomach. And although many of us think that our stomach is kind of down in our belly button region, our abdominal region, your stomach is actually tucked up a little bit on the left side of your body, up underneath your rib cage. And it's basically, like I said, a pouch of smooth muscle, and these muscles contract and continue to mix your food up and churn it up with some of your stomach acids. So those stomach acids are actually activated when you have food in your mouth. So the process of you chewing and physically breaking down the food in your mouth, it triggers your stomach cells to start producing and releasing those digestive gastric juices or digestive juices or stomach acids. Lots of terms for the same thing, but they're then released into that stomach pouch, and the contractions of your stomach muscle are helping to further break down the food molecules in your stomach. Once everything is kind of broken down and turned into what's called chyme, it's not really food-like anymore. Now it's a different mixture called chyme. And then those muscles in your smooth muscles start to squeeze it down into your small intestine, which is the next step. I just want to add one more little fun fact. Some people, when they have what's called heartburn, it's a condition where we have our stomach acids that are starting to kind of sneak up into our esophagus. And we say it's heartburn, even though it has nothing to do with our heart, but it's located kind of where the point of your heart is, the bottom portion, your ventricles of your heart kind of angled off to the left side of your body. And so it feels like your heart is burning, but it's actually stomach acids that are seeping up they're trying to sneak back up into the esophagus. And because the esophagus doesn't have the same mucus lining, you can feel that pain in those cells or in that part of your body. So we call it heartburn, but it really is just stomach acids coming back up into your esophagus. All right, so as I said, after the food gets ready in the stomach, then it's going to get squeezed into the small intestine. The small intestine is not named the small intestine because of its length. It's not a short organ. Rather, it's quite long. It's the longest part of your digestive tract. I think it's about, on average, 20 feet long. So the small intestine is named the small intestine because of its small diameter. And in fact, this is where most of our digestion and nutrient absorption takes place. A lot of people make the mistake and they think that the digestion takes place in your stomach, the organ in your stomach, and that is not the case. Most of your chemical digestion are taking place in the small intestine. And again, it's the longest organ in this tract. And so it makes sense that there's a lot of surface area and a lot of that digestion is taking place here. So why is this the area where there's all kinds of digestion? So we've got a whole bunch of enzymes and bile that get added to our tract from accessory organs that we'll talk about later. And so these added enzymes and bile are going to help to further chemically break down our food as it passes into the small intestine. The other thing about the small intestine is, even though it's still small and skinny and narrow in diameter, what increases the surface area even more are these tiny little projections called villi. And inside of these villi are capillaries. And so this is where that absorption is taking place. All of your food nutrients that are being broken down into smaller and smaller molecules, they are able to pass through the cells of the villi and into the capillaries that are found within those villi. So this is, again, the big part of your digestive pathway that people don't really think about too often. This small intestine is really a vital organ to help getting those nutrients into your bloodstream to help be distributed to the rest of your body. There's another picture showing that same thing. So again, those glucose molecules in the picture, the little dots there, those are going to pass through the membrane or pass through across those cells of the villi and into the capillaries that are inside of those villi. So a lot of surface area, again, with length and because of these projections, these little wavy finger-like projections inside of that tube. Once the food passes through the small intestine, most of the nutrients have been absorbed. So again, what remains in your tube, your digestive tract, is really waste product at this point. But remember, back in our stomach, we were secreting and releasing a bunch of stomach acids, and we've been adding in enzymes into this pathway. So it's still a pretty liquidy kind of mixture. So the role of the large intestine is to reabsorb a lot of that water. So at this point, we're reabsorbing all of our water and really compacting what will then be our feces, which we will eliminate from the body. So your chyme will slowly pass through the large intestine outlined here in orange. So it actually, this picture doesn't do a great job of showing you the connection, but the small intestine ends right over here, which remember our diagrams, this is actually the right side of the person whose organs we would be looking at. So this is actually the beginning of the large intestine right here. And you'll notice this little worm-like structure. That is the appendix. And the appendix is one of our vestigial structures. Doesn't really have a purpose that we know of right now. We think that it used to be helpful in digesting raw meat in our ancestors. But this is where that food then passes into the large intestine, and it will go up the right side of the body, across the abdomen, and then down the left side of the body, and whatever remains, again, now water has been removed, whatever remains will continue to get compact into our feces, and then we'll get the signal that it's time to go to the bathroom, and we can eliminate whatever is left in there into the toilet. Say, see you later. All right. So what I did not talk about yet are these three additional structures that we call accessory organs. They're really important to our digestive system. However, food doesn't actually pass through them. So we have these three structures pictured on the slide here. We have our liver, which is a really large organ. We have this green structure called the gallbladder. And then we have this kind of looks like a fish fillet, the pancreas, which is another accessory organ. So these three organs are helpful and contribute to our digestive tract. However, food will not pass through this. This is not part of the digestive tube. They simply contribute to the digestive tract. So they produce more digestive enzymes, and they'll add that to our digestive tract. We'll look a little bit more closely here at the liver. You've probably heard of the term bile before. Sometimes people will mistakenly say that when they have vomit or they can taste something in the back of their throat, they might say that they feel or saw bile or tasted bile. That's unlikely to be true. Bile is actually produced by the liver, and it is secreted or produced and then released and stored in the gallbladder. But that goes right into the small intestines. And so most likely you don't actually see your bile ever, but it is contributing to the digestive path. So the bile is responsible for helping to break down lipids. You'll learn a little bit more about that tomorrow. And these lipids just get broken down into smaller molecules. They don't necessarily have monomers, but they do get broken down into smaller bits, little droplets. Another function of the liver, kind of separate from the digestive pathway, is that it can store sugars. So we actually have stored sugar in our liver, and if we have low blood sugar levels, the liver gets a signal that tells our body to release some of that sugar into the bloodstream so that we can have some sugar if we have low blood sugar levels. And then another thing that you've probably heard before is that livers help to break things down or detoxify the body. So if you're taking Tylenol for a fever or a headache, it's your liver that will help to break down those molecules in the medication that you're taking. Any kind of drugs or alcohol that is used, you know that an abuse of those substances can have significant damaging effects on the liver as well. So it does a lot of good things for us. It's a really important organ. The little green guy that's squished in there, that's the gallbladder. The gallbladder doesn't make anything, but it does store the bile for our digestion of fats or a breakdown of fats. So it's produced, the bile is produced by the liver, and then it's kind of shoved off to the side in this small little pocket of the gallbladder. You may have heard of people who have gallstones before, and what happens there with the gallstones is it's crystallized bile, so it kind of crystallizes it, and then similar to a kidney stone, as it passes through these tiny little tubes, it can cause a lot of pain and discomfort. And so people have to sometimes get their gallbladders removed or somehow break down those gallstones. And that would affect their ability to store the bile, and then they have to just kind of watch their diet on how much lipids or fats that they are consuming. And finally, we have the pancreas. And the pancreas also has multiple really important roles in the body. The pancreas is responsible for producing a lot of your enzymes to help with the chemical digestion of food. So the pancreas kind of sits there by the beginning of the small intestine and will help to secrete those enzymes into the small intestine. So as the food is, or the chyme is passing into the small intestine, it helps to break that down, the chemicals down into smaller and smaller molecules. It's also important in your endocrine system in maintaining some hormones, including insulin. So it helps to regulate your blood sugar levels as well. And again, remember that these three accessory organs, food is not ever passing through them, rather they are contributing to the digestive tract. So that is the end of your screencast for today. You'll learn more about the chemical digestion tomorrow and some more specific details that you'll add to your notes. But today, all you have to do is go ahead and take a couple of minutes to complete the Schoology quiz, and we'll talk to you later. Have a good day.